Welcome back everyone. We're going to be talking about another Samsung Galaxy phone today, and no, this is not one of those top tier flagship phones. This is one of the budget generations, which is really cool. I love the whole entire A series of devices, and the specific one we're going to be talking about is the Samsung Galaxy A30. Now when these things came out last year, the whole entire lineup, it was pretty much in its infancy. We had a couple of A devices before. I think we had phones like the A7, and we had the Samsung Galaxy Alpha from back in the day too, which was pretty interesting, and I reviewed that one. But this phone is pretty much just like that phone in a lot of ways, and what's really cool about it is that it doesn't cost that, like that price tag that when it first came out, and we actually have the successor of this phone out now. We have the Samsung Galaxy A31, which is still pretty decent. Now this phone on Amazon is costing about $210, which really isn't like a crazy amount. However, there are some phones that might do you a little bit better in that price tag. Phones like the Google Pixel 2 XL or the original Pixel 2, whichever one, the Galaxy S9, I think is still a pretty good contender. But this one is a newer device at the end of the day, so I think it's perfectly fine. I'll leave all those linked down below so you can get them from there for the cheapest prices that I find on Amazon, and you can help support the channel at the same time. But looking on the front, the Samsung Galaxy A30 has a 6.4-inch Super AMOLED display. It's a 1080p display, and honestly, it's a pretty good panel at the end of the day. What's really cool is that on that front, you have, not a lot of bezel. You have a very slim bezel across the whole entire chassis of the phone, up in the front camera even. There's a little bit of a notch, but it's nothing too crazy. But on the bottom, you actually have a little bit of a chin, which is perfectly fine. And what's really impressive is that this phone is kind of supposed to be like a budget phone. That's kind of like the demographic it's going for. And the fact that this thing actually has this type of design and this type of price tag is very impressive to me. So for sure, this phone, with the way it looks, it is not a bad thing in my opinion, and I think it still actually looks pretty good at the end of the day. Now on the bottom, you do have USB Type-C, which is really cool, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of budget phones still use the micro USB port, as even phones like the Galaxy A10, which came out at the same exact time, which is totally okay. But this one having USB Type-C is a really cool thing at the end of the day. You have a headphone jack on this phone as well, which is really cool. And on the back, you can see we have a fingerprint sensor, which is really awesome. And you have that dual camera setup, which really kind of makes this phone a little bit better in terms of the camera setup. And the whole entire A lineup, I was not expecting them to have, amazing cameras or anything. I think I've owned most of the A series devices of last year, the A10, A20, A30, and the A50. I did not pick up the A40 or the ones above the A50. But even all those phones have pretty decent cameras, and the Samsung Galaxy A30 really is no exception to that. So for sure, at the end of the day, the Samsung Galaxy A30's build does not feel cheap in the hand. It feels pretty decent. It does not feel like a Galaxy S10 or a Galaxy S20. I don't think it's like up in that league. And this phone feels a little bit lighter to me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a placebo effect or something, but it just doesn't feel as maybe heavy as a phone like a Galaxy S20 or S20 Plus. But at the end of the day, it's totally okay, and I think it's okay at the end of the day. It's not a big deal. There's no IP certification on this phone either, so if you get a little bit of water on it, it might be able to handle it, but there's no certification, so we can't guarantee that it'll be able to handle it, basically. This phone does have a micro SD card slot as well, which is amazing. I love seeing that in phones, and even on a budget phone like this, that's a really cool thing. And since there's only two storage models, and they're actually pretty low, a 32 gig model and the 64 gig model, it really makes it that much better that this thing has a micro SD card slot. So it really doesn't matter how much inbuilt storage you have, as long as you have a micro SD card slot at the end of the day. So for sure, the Samsung Galaxy A30's build is pretty decent overall for a budget phone for sure, even now in 2020. Now hitting on the software, this thing did come out with Android Pie with Samsung Galaxy's One UI, which is really cool. I like that software coming from TouchWiz and Samsung Experience, but I still think they have a long way to go. And this phone is scheduled to get Android 10 at some point. I think in May it's coming. At the same time, the Galaxy Fold is getting One UI 2.0, so whenever that happens, I'll go ahead and make updated videos and tutorials and all that stuff so you guys can kind of get updated on it, because I still have all these A-series devices and I have to make videos about them sometimes. So as of right now, my Samsung Galaxy A30 is still on Pi, which is totally okay. That's the current version that I'm on right now, but I'm sure, like I said, in the next couple months, it's going to be getting One UI 2.0. Now, I've been seeing a lot of discussion going about of how Samsung is going to be kind of keeping the software lifecycle support going offering on their Samsung Galaxy A devices. And I think if they're going to, and I don't know if they've said anything publicly about this, but I don't know, like, if they're going to keep their S lineup and their A lineup side by side, I find it hard to believe that Samsung would push software updates, the same software updates on their older phones or their budget phones as they would on their flagship phones. So I think honestly these A lineup phones might just get one software update and that's it, which is extremely bad, but believe it or not, it's even worse than Samsung's soft updates on their Note lineup and their S lineup already. So I find it kind of hard to believe what they're going to do there. Maybe, the A30 will last as long as the S lineup in terms of software support, but we really don't know yet. Or maybe I just don't know yet. So once we figure out more information and all that, I guess I'll keep you guys updated. But as of right now, it is scheduled to get Android 10 at some point. So at least that's better than nothing. So in terms of software update, that's pretty much it. Now in terms of the performance, this thing has the Exynos 7904 chipset, an octa-core CPU, a Mali G7 whatever GPU. And like I said, there's two different models. The base model, the 32 gig model, has 3 gigs of RAM, where the top tier 64 gig model has 4 gigs of RAM. What I can tell you about the performance is that for a budget phone, it's really not that bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as bad as you might think. It's okay for the most part. It's not horrible, but the thing you might actually see some whole lag in, or things you might not appreciate the most in terms of the performance, would definitely be the RAM management. Because we only have 3 gigs of RAM in my specific phone, I only have 3, but even the 4 is not really a lot for a Samsung One UI experience device or Samsung One UI 2 or 1 device. This specific software does require quite a bit of resources in the background. It's not like a crazy amount, but it is something to kind of consider at the end of the day. It's not really like an amazing performing device even for a budget phone, and even for a phone in this price tag, in this price range in the used market. But I think if you have to go this route, I don't think it's a horrible device either. You know what I mean? Like, it'll definitely get you from point A to point B. If you need to load up apps and if you need to play games every once in a while, then I think it's okay. The main problem you're going to run into is the RAM management portion. Apps will close on you in the background if you have a lot open, or if you have, decent sized apps in the background, apps will probably restart, which you'll find probably confusing and even probably a little annoying here and there. If you have an app like Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and like YouTube, maybe like Facebook, WhatsApp, if you have those apps in your background, sometimes those apps will go ahead and actually restart on you, which, like I said, isn't an end all be all. It's not like you're going to go ahead and change your life over it, but it is something kind of weird at the end of the day. So in terms of performance, I'll give it a little bit below average, or at least a little bit below what I was expecting. I don't think it's a horrible performing phone, but I think, this phone came out in 2019. It's costing about that $200 something in the used market. I think you can probably get a better phone and better performance from a different phone, in my opinion, but it is what it is. Now, hitting on the camera, this thing, like I said, has a dual camera setup on the back, a 16 megapixel wide angle lens, then a 5 megapixel ultra wide sensor. And I think this camera is pretty good at the end of the day. I don't think it's, horrible or anything like that. But again, when you compare to cameras like the Samsung Galaxy S20, obviously those ones are much better, but this one still gets the job done. A really kind of weird thing is that you're not able to shoot 4K videos on it. You can only do 1080p at up to 30 frames per second, which is kind of annoying. Some people might not like that, but I think for a majority of people, they might just stick with 1080p. But it would have been nice if we could get 1080p at 60 or even 4K at 30. That would have been really, really cool. So for a budget phone, I guess it's okay. But like I said, you can get a much better performing camera if you go for a Galaxy S9 or a Google Pixel 2 XL. On that front camera, you have a 16 megapixel lens, and you can do 1080p on that, which is really cool as well. So I think overall the camera, I'll give it a little an average score. For a budget phone, it's not supposed to be overtaking the S lineup, but it is kind of a weird thing at the end of the day that there was no 4K on it. Now, ending it off with the battery life, this thing does have a 4,000 mAh battery, and this is probably one of the biggest highlights of this phone for sure. That's a pretty big size battery to have on a phone that really doesn't, it's not really extremely powerful. The screen is 1080p. It's a pretty big screen, but even then, it's a pretty big size battery for this phone. And for sure, at the end of the day, the battery life is one of its highlights. It can definitely get you at least a day on very, pretty heavy intensive usage. and maybe even more if you kind of spin it out a little bit. So for sure, the battery life at the end of the day is one of its highlights. Like I stated, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad battery life. It's not removable. However, there is no wireless charging, which is kind of weird for a phone like this. Even for a budget phone, it would have been really cool if there was wireless charging on it, but even not, it's totally okay. It only costs like $200. So to kind of sum up the video and to answer the question, should you pick up the Samsung Galaxy A30 in 2020, what I would tell you is that it's not a bad phone at all. I don't think there's really anything that tells me don't recommend it to people. If you have to pick it up, then I think it's okay. You can even pick these things up at Walmart or Best Buy still, I think, unless the A31 are here now. But like I said, if you're having to go this route, you might be better off just picking up a phone like a Google Pixel 2 or Pixel 2 XL. And I don't know why I keep recommending those phones, but that just seems like the perfect fit here. Or a phone like a Galaxy S9. Those phones are almost in the same price range as these ones, and I still think those ones have a lot more value to be brought to the table than the Samsung Galaxy A30. But that's just me, you know what I mean? Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just kind of how I'm feeling here. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, if you want to pick up any of those phones, all those phones will be linked down below. But hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.